Main factors in production and financing. Part 2. Net present value, internal rate of return, and fixed cost. When we measure the performance of an investment, we may use net present value or internal rate of return. How different measurements will affect the fixed cost of investment. A company has a choice to select one of the two projects. The first project requires an initial spending of $8 million. For the next 4 years, the project will generate $4 million profit each year. The second project requires an initial spending of $14 million. For the next 8 years, the project will generate $4 million profit each year. When the company is a publicly listed company, the value of a project can be realized immediately through the change of market value of company. The criterion of selection is net present value of a project. Suppose that the discount rate or the cost of capital is 6%. Which project you will choose? When the company is a privately owned company, the value of a project can only be realized gradually through actual cash flows. The criterion of selection is internal rate of return of a project. Which project you will choose? Now we will calculate NPV of two projects. With 6% discount rate, the net present value of the first project is $5.8 million. The net present value of the second project is $10.84 million. With NPV as criterion, we will choose the second project. Now let's calculate IRR for the two projects. For the first one, the IRR is 35%. For the second one, IRR is 23%. So we will choose the first project. Some observations. Publicly traded companies, which can capitalize NPV instantly, prefer NPV. Private companies, which can only profit from actual cash flows, prefer IRR. When we measure with NPV, we choose higher fixed cost investment. When we measure with IRR, we choose lower fixed cost investment. Education as fixed cost. Education is a big part of fixed cost investment in modern society. How much education should we get? The more, the better. Value of education. Most of us start working after we get a bachelor's degree at age 22. Some of us will spend 3 more years to get a master's degree at age 25 before working. Suppose the average annual living cost is $18,000. The first year after tax income is $36,000. It takes 3 more years to get a master's degree. After getting a master's degree, the first year after tax income is $42,000. Each year, income increases by 2%. We retire at age 65, which means 43 years of work for people with bachelor degree and 40 years of work for people with master degree. Assume the discount rate is 4% per year. Calculate NPVs of two scenarios. Assuming the total living cost to age of 65, we implicitly assume the living cost after 65 to be covered by taxes and pension deductions. Here is the answer for us to get a bachelor degree. The present value of total living cost is about 400,000. The present value of total income is quite higher, with NPV of about 15,000. Here is the calculation for the master degree. The results are very close. Comments: the NPV of the two choices are almost the same. The living costs of the education years, including tuitions, are probably higher than the average. 3 additional years of education for master's degree probably will push the NPV value further down. Most people will not go for a master's degree. There is even less people pursuing a doctor's degree. Discussion on broader issues. A common measure of performance. The fate of a business depends on its profit and loss over long term. The fate of a biological system depends on increase or decrease of its population over long term. The fate of a social system depends on the increase or decrease of its population over long term. Japan was the first country whose fertility rate dropped below the replacement rate around 1970. In 1989, Nikkei index was close to 40,000. After 30 years, it is around 20,000 now. Its median age is around 48 years old, the oldest in the world. Today, its fertility rate is around 1.4 per woman, below replacement rate significantly. Public debt GDP ratio is around 230%, highest in the world. There is a great concern on biological and financial sustainability. Other wealthy countries, including Canada, face similar problems. The fertility rates in most highly industrialized countries are below replacement rate for several decades. While the economy is still growing in these countries, in an aging population, economy is increasingly monetized. We don't make money taking care of our own babies, but the senior care by nurses, social workers, and doctors is often paid with salaries. There is also large-scale immigration. This reduces the speed of aging process. To make social systems with below replacement fertility viable again, we need to lower fixed costs, reduce investment duration, let the market instead of central banks determine discount rate, which would be much higher. Spend less to reduce uncertainty, buy less insurance. Let the market determine the market size instead of forceful government intervention. Here are some of the frequently asked questions. Should the tax rate be higher or lower? Should the pension deduction be increased or decreased? Should people get more or less years of schooling? Should the interest rate be higher or lower? Can the magnitude of financial crisis and business cycles be reduced? How? Should the government regulate financial institutions and the business more or less? Does creation of the Eurozone benefit or harm Europe? It seems answering each question requires very specialized knowledge. From our discussion about main factors in production and capital budgeting, we can answer all these questions together. Our answer: tax rate should be reduced. With a lower tax rate, the size of the government will be smaller. Government is the ultimate high fixed cost institution. Pension deduction should be decreased. Much pension deductions are invested in stock market, making the largest companies even larger. On average, people should get less years of schooling. Many university graduates go back to college to get employable skills. Government should regulate business activity less. This will lower the fixed cost of companies. This is especially good for small companies. Small companies with a lower fixed cost become more competitive. Small companies are more labor-intensive and less resource-intensive. Central banks should play less role in setting interest rate. Interest rate will be higher to reflect the market risk. When above measures are taken, the level of fixed cost in the society declines. As a result, the magnitude of business cycles will be reduced. Eurozone, by greatly increasing the market of currency in a large area with many different sovereign countries and the labor market not very integrated, greatly increases the fixed cost of Eurozone. In a system with below replacement fertility rate, the further increase of fixed cost generally do more harm than good. When the relations among major factors of economics are better understood, the long-term consequences of many policy issues become very clear. In general, species with large body sizes, a proxy for fixed cost, have long lifespan, low discount rate, low dissipation rate of energy, or slow rate of growth, do well in low uncertainty environment, consume more resources, and have less offspring than species with small body sizes. Selective advantage of different pathogens with different fixed costs. Viruses, bacteria, and protists are common pathogens with different sizes. Viruses are the smallest, bacteria are in the middle, protists are the largest. In human societies of different wealth levels, types of disease are often different. In wealthy societies, Diseases are often caused by viruses, such as HIV, flu, and coronaviruses. In poor societies, serious diseases are often caused by protists, such as malaria. Why are the differences? Selective pressures in wealthy societies. Protists are larger and require more investment. Higher fixed cost systems can't mutate as fast as low fixed cost systems. In environment when pathogens are vigorously attacked, protists, being slow to mutate, are sitting ducks. In wealthy societies, people are well nourished and medical care is well funded. Large pathogens, such as protists, do not perform well. Small pathogens, such as viruses, which can mutate very fast, are more successful in eluding vaccines and medicines. Common contagious diseases in wealthy countries. Among viruses, there are DNA and RNA viruses. DNA are more costly to make and are more stable than RNA molecules. RNA-coded viruses mutate even faster than DNA-coded viruses. HIV, flu virus, and coronavirus are all RNA viruses. They are all single-stranded viruses that are even less stable than double-stranded viruses. Their instability makes effective vaccines difficult to make and difficult to last long. Selective pressures in poor countries. In poor social environment, where little is invested in public health, large pathogens are more competitive among all pathogens. Hence, diseases such as malaria, which is caused by protists, are common in poor countries, but not in rich countries. Immune systems of people in poor countries are well trained. Tiny and weak viruses, such as coronavirus, can't cause much damage to majority of people. Novel coronavirus cause more damage in rich countries, where average age of population is much higher. Long-term viability. In areas of rapid reproduction, the pace of evolution is fast, and the selection pressure is high. The immune systems tend to be stronger. Over long term, such social systems are more resistant to pandemics. They are more viable. Chemical and biological weapons are banned worldwide, not nuclear weapons. Why? The fixed cost of nuclear and chemical weapons are different. Chemical and biological weapons are cheaper to make. By banning chemical and biological weapons, only few countries can make weapons of mass destruction. This makes these few countries more powerful. Nuclear weapons and terrorists. Since the birth of nuclear weapons, there has been constant worry for terrorists to acquire nuclear weapons, but it has not happened so far. Why? To acquire nuclear weapons, we need a high level of investment, both financially and organizationally. This makes terrorist groups easy target. Therefore, terrorist groups prefer low-cost, low-profile activities. They prefer chemical and biological weapons.